The rain had fallen all afternoon, the kind that drummed soft and steady against the old windows of the mansion on the hill. By nightfall, the air hung heavy with mist, curling around the trimmed hedges and marble fountains like a living thing. Inside, the Whitmore estate shimmered with chandeliers and laughter, a grand autumn ball hosted by the governor's family, where the city's elite gathered under the glittering light of privilege. Clara Monroe wasn't supposed to be there. Her hands were cracked from scrubbing floors, her dress borrowed from the laundry bin, still faintly smelling of lavender detergent. She had spent the last 3 hours polishing silver in the servants' hall, listening to the music drift down from above. Strings and laughter, the sound of a life she would never live. But when Mrs. Whitmore called her upstairs to replace a tray of champagne, Clara couldn't resist stepping beyond the servants' corridor. Just one glance, she told herself. One stolen breath of beauty. The ballroom was a sea of light. Crystal droplets caught the chandelier's glow like captured stars. Men in tuxedos, women in velvet gowns, every movement choreographed, every smile rehearsed. And then, at the far edge of the room, near the balcony doors, she saw him. Elias. He stood apart from the crowd, half in shadow. Tall, dark-haired, with a stillness that didn't belong in a room so loud. His suit was immaculate, his collar slightly open as though he couldn't bear to be buttoned in. People glanced at him, then looked away too quickly, as if some silent rule kept them from getting too close. Clara's eyes lingered. There was something strange about him, something magnetic and lonely. His gaze drifted toward the open balcony, where the rain had turned to a fine silver mist. He looked up at the night sky, then down again, as though something unseen weighed on him. "Clara," hissed a voice. He jumped. It was Martha, the head maid. "You're not supposed to be here. Get the champagne to the west table before Mrs. Whitmore sees you." "Yes, ma'am," Clara whispered, balancing the tray. But as she moved through the crowd, she couldn't stop glancing toward the stranger. When their eyes met, it was like something inside her stopped breathing. His stare wasn't cold, it was searching, familiar almost. His pupils flared slightly, catching the light in a way that made them seem otherworldly. He took a step forward. Clara's heartbeat stumbled. She turned away too quickly, the tray trembling in her hands. A glass tipped, spilling champagne over her borrowed dress. She gasped softly, retreating toward the side door. Outside, the air was cool, thick with rain and pine. She pressed against the stone wall, trying to calm her shaking hands. The music inside felt a world away. Then footsteps. He had followed her. "Wait," he said quietly, his voice deep but hesitant. She froze. Slowly she turned. He stood a few feet away, rain gathering on his hair, his tie loosened. Up close, he looked even more out of place. Too wild, too raw for the polished world he was standing in. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said. "You dropped your handkerchief." Clara blinked. She didn't own a handkerchief. But when he extended his hand, there it was. A small white square embroidered with the letter C. She took it, her fingers brushing his. "It's not mine," she murmured. He smiled faintly, a sad, broken sort of smile. "Maybe it will be." The rain grew heavier, pattering against the stone steps. A flash of lightning lit the sky behind him, and for an instant, Clara swore she saw something shimmer across his eyes, a reflection that wasn't quite human. She swallowed hard. "You're Mr. Whitmore's guest." He hesitated. "Something like that. You don't seem to enjoy the party." "Too bright," he said simply. "Too many eyes." There was a silence then, not awkward but fragile. The kind that feels like standing at the edge of something vast and dangerous. Clara looked away. "I should go back. If Mrs. Whitmore finds me." "She won't," he interrupted softly. "She never looks beyond her own reflection." That made her laugh, a small, startled sound that felt like the first real thing she'd heard all evening. He smiled again, warmer this time. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara." "Clara," he repeated, tasting the word. "I'm Elias." Lightning flickered again, distant thunder rolling through the valley. "I've seen you before," she said before she could stop herself. "In town. Near the forest road." His jaw tightened. "That wasn't me. But, Clara." His tone softened, but there was something urgent beneath it. "If you ever see me there again, you should go the other way. Promise me." The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the wet stone. Her heart thudded painfully. "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward the woods, the dark, endless stretch beyond the estate walls. For a moment, the clouds broke, and moonlight spilled across his face. His pupils flared again, catching the silver light like a secret. Then he stepped back. "You should go inside." Before she could speak, he turned and vanished into the mist. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The rain tapped against her small attic window as she sat on the edge of her narrow bed, still wearing the lavender-scented dress. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Elias's face, the sadness in it, the warning. She thought of the handkerchief on her nightstand, the neat letter C stitched in silver thread. She touched it lightly, half expecting it to vanish. In the distance, a low howl rose through the storm, long, haunting, and heartbreakingly human. Clara's breath caught. The sound came from the woods beyond the Whitmore estate. And though she told herself it was just a wolf, something deep in her bones whispered the truth. It was him. The next morning, the city of Asheville lay under a veil of fog. The hills were slick with dew, the streets quiet. Clara walked to the market for bread, her mind restless. Every stranger's face made her heart jump, every shadow looked like him. She reached the bakery when she saw a man leaning by the fence, tall, hood pulled over his head. Even through the fog, she recognized the way he stood. "Elias," she breathed. He turned slowly, eyes hidden beneath the hood. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then he crossed the street toward her. His movements too graceful, too silent. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "You said that last night," she whispered. "But you came back." His expression flickered. "Because I needed to see you once more." "Why me?" He looked away. "Because you looked at me, Clara. And you didn't look away." The words sank into her like heat. Around them, the town was waking. A child laughing, a cart rattling over cobblestone, but it felt like none of it existed. She stepped closer, her voice barely a breath. "What are you hiding from?" Elias hesitated, his jaw tightening as if he were fighting something inside. "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do." He took another step back. "Then promise me something. No matter what you learn, no matter what you see, don't be afraid of me." Before she could answer, he turned sharply toward the trees. Something had caught his attention, a sound, faint but sharp. His nostrils flared slightly, animal-like. "Elias!" He didn't reply. A figure appeared at the edge of the square, a man in a black coat, watching them with an unreadable expression. When Elias saw him, his body went rigid. The man smiled coldly. "Still pretending to be one of them, Prince?" Elias's hands clenched at his sides. Clara stepped back, confused. "Prince?" The man took another step forward. "Your father's court grows impatient. You can't hide among mortals forever." Elias's voice dropped to a growl. "Leave her out of this." The man's eyes glinted. Too late. Before Clara could speak, Elias moved, faster than she could see, placing himself between her and the stranger. For an instant, his shadow rippled, the edges of his form seeming to blur under the pale morning light. The man smirked, then melted back into the fog as if he'd never existed. Elias turned to Clara, breathing hard. His pupils were wide, glowing faintly gold. "Go home," he said. "Tell me what's happening," she demanded. His voice broke. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me." He took her hand, his skin feverishly warm, trembling. "If I tell you, you'll never see me the same way again." She met his gaze steadily. "Then let me decide." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Elias exhaled, his breath visible in the cold air. "When the full moon rises tomorrow," he said softly, "you'll understand everything. But I beg you, Clara, stay away from the woods." He released her hand and disappeared into the fog, leaving her standing in the middle of the empty street, heart racing, the sound of his voice echoing in her head. When the wind shifted, she thought she heard it again, that same low, mournful howl rolling through the hills. Only this time it sounded like a cry for help. Morning sunlight slipped through the thin curtains of Clara's attic room, cutting across the small space in golden bands. Dust floated in the air, glimmering like suspended stars. But even with the city waking below her, the world felt hushed, as if it was holding its breath with her. She hadn't slept. The images from the previous day kept replaying behind her eyelids. The man in the black coat, the way Elias's eyes had glowed faintly gold, the desperate warning in his voice. Stay away from the woods. Outside, Asheville was alive again. The clang of the trolleys, the smell of roasting coffee drifting from Lexington Avenue, vendors calling out prices for apples and late-season peaches. Clara tried to let the rhythm of the city drown her thoughts, but nothing worked. Every face she passed seemed to carry a hint of his, the stranger who had called Elias Prince. Prince of what? She pressed her hands together as she walked toward the estate, the weight of her secret heavy and thrilling. For the first time in her life, something extraordinary had brushed against her small, predictable world. And now nothing felt the same. By noon, she was back at the Whitmore mansion, polishing silver trays in the servants' kitchen. The other girls gossiped while they worked, laughter spilling like warm syrup. "Did you see him again last night?" one of them whispered. "Who?" Clara asked absently. "The Whitmore's mysterious guest," said Nora, her friend with a dimpled smile. "Tall, dark hair, quiet as a ghost. They say he's from old money. Some ruined northern family, maybe." Clara froze mid-polish. "You mean Elias?" Nora's eyebrows rose. "You know his name." Clara's cheeks flushed. "I just overheard someone say it." The cook, Mrs. Taylor, snorted from the stove. "That boy gives me chills. Never eats, never talks, and he's always gone before sunrise. You ask me, he's got secrets thicker than that fog out there." Laughter followed, but Clara stayed silent. Beneath the chatter, she could feel a pulse of dread, as though the world was slowly shifting, realigning itself around something she couldn't yet see. That evening, as the last guests left and the house fell quiet, Clara carried a basket of linens upstairs. Passing the grand hallway, she noticed a faint light flickering under one of the study doors. Elias's study. Her heartbeat quickened. She hesitated, the folded linens pressing against her chest. Then, unable to resist, she knocked lightly. No answer. She opened the door a few inches, just enough to see him sitting by the fire. His jacket was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, the soft orange light painting his face in amber tones. He was staring into the flames, his hands trembling slightly. "Elias," she whispered. He turned sharply, and for a moment she saw the reflection of the fire in his eyes, gold and feral. "Clara," he breathed, standing. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to see you," she said. "You said I'd understand tonight. The full moon." He stepped toward her quickly, closing the distance. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Yes, I do. I want the truth." His breath caught. "The truth would destroy what little peace you have left." She held her ground. "I'd rather know a dangerous truth than live a safe lie." For a long time he just looked at her, eyes dark, voice unsteady. "You remind me of her," he said quietly. "Of who?" "My mother." His voice cracked on the word. "She was human like you. She saw kindness where others saw curse. She believed love could tame the wild in me." Clara's pulse raced. "And could it?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hurt to look at. "No one can tame what was born under a blood moon." Lightning flickered outside, illuminating the edges of the room. Elias turned toward the window. The storm clouds were rolling over the hills again, dark and heavy. When it rises tonight, he murmured, you must not look for me. Not in the woods, not anywhere. Promise me. Her throat tightened. You're afraid I'll see what you are. He looked back at her, eyes shimmering in the firelight. No, Clara. I'm afraid you'll see what I've done. The silence between them was so complete it felt like sound itself had died. Then let me carry it with you, she whispered. Whatever it is. He shook his head, almost smiling at her foolish courage. You don't know what you're offering. Then teach me. Something broke in his expression, the walls he'd built cracking under the weight of her sincerity. He took her hand, his thumb brushing the inside of her wrist. Her pulse fluttered violently. Clara, he said softly, if I let you close, I will ruin you. Her eyes glistened. Maybe I was ruined before you ever found me. He drew in a sharp breath, his control slipping for the first time. Then, as if the air itself demanded it, he leaned forward and kissed her, not gently but desperately, like someone drowning reaching for air. The world around them blurred, the sound of rain, the heat of the fire, the faint shiver of glass as thunder rolled over the valley. She felt his heartbeat through his chest, strong and erratic, like something wild trying to tear free. When he pulled away, his eyes were bright gold. Now you see, he whispered hoarsely. Clara staggered back, breathless. Elias! But he was already trembling, veins darkening beneath his skin. His jaw tightening as if fighting invisible pain. It's starting, he gasped. The moon. He fell to his knees, gripping the floorboards, a low growl rising from deep within him. His body shuddered violently, muscles tightening as if his bones themselves were rejecting their shape. Elias! Clara dropped beside him, trying to hold him, but he pushed her back. Go, he roared. You can't see me like this. I'm not leaving you. His voice fractured between human and something else, a guttural sound that didn't belong in this world. His spine arched, his hands clawed the wood. The air filled with the sound of splintering bone. Then silence. Clara stared in horror as the light dimmed, the fire flickering weakly. A shadow loomed over her, not monstrous but tragic. A creature crouched where Elias had been, for the color of midnight, eyes molten gold. It looked at her, trembling. And in those eyes she saw Elias, trapped, ashamed, begging silently for her not to scream. But she didn't. Instead, she knelt down slowly, her hands shaking. It's still you, she whispered. The creature tilted its head, a faint sound, almost a whimper, escaping its throat. Then outside a howl echoed through the storm. Another. Then another. Elias froze. Clara turned toward the window. The woods were alive with movement. Dark shapes darting through the mist, fast and furious. Elias, she breathed. He looked toward the forest, body rigid. Then, with one final glance at her, he leapt through the open window into the rain. Clara ran to the ledge, watching him vanish into the trees. And there, at the edge of the forest, she saw something glint, eyes like fire watching her from the darkness. The man in the black coat. His voice cut through the storm, sharp as a blade. You've chosen the cursed one, girl. And now the pack will come for you too. Before she could move, he disappeared into the woods, swallowed by shadow. Clara stood frozen, drenched in moonlight and fear. Somewhere beyond the trees, the sound of battle began. Snarls, growls, the tearing of earth. Then silence again, deep and dreadful. The storm broke open, rain cascading like 1,000 whispered warnings. She pressed a trembling hand to her heart and whispered his name into the night. Elias! But the only answer was the echo of wolves, and the cold silver gaze of the moon, watching her from above. The storm had left the morning pale and hollow. A thin fog hung over the valley, coiling around the pine trees and the old cemetery behind the Whitmore estate. Everything smelled of wet soil and iron. Clara woke with a jolt, not from sleep, but from the memory of what she had seen. Her dress still carried the scent of rain and smoke, and beneath her fingernails, Tiny splinters of the study's floorboards clung like proof of a nightmare. But it hadn't been a nightmare. She could still feel the heat of his skin, the trembling pulse beneath his ribs before his body had shattered into something wild. Elias was gone. She pressed her palm against her chest, breathing through the ache. Somewhere deep in the woods, the wolves had howled until dawn. Then silence. Heavy, complete. Downstairs, the house was uneasy. The staff whispered of torn fences, livestock missing from the Whitmore stables. The forest patrol had found deep claw marks on the gates. And someone, one of the Whitmore guards, hadn't come back from his rounds. Clara moved like a ghost through the halls, numb and restless. Every mirror she passed showed a girl she no longer recognized. Pale, hollow-eyed, haunted by something no one else could see. By noon, she couldn't stand the weight of it anymore. She slipped out of the mansion through the back gardens, past the marble fountain where the lilies floated like tiny ghosts. The woods loomed ahead, the air thick and wet. Mrs. Taylor's words from the morning echoed in her mind. The forest swallows the foolish. But Clara wasn't foolish. She was desperate. She stepped beyond the fence. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. The sounds of the estate, the clatter of dishes, the distant hum of carriages, all fell away. The ground was soft beneath her shoes, the smell of pine sharp in the damp air. She followed faint tracks through the mud, too large to be human, too deliberate to be random. They led toward a clearing she'd never seen before, where the fog thinned just enough to reveal a small cabin. It looked abandoned, walls half collapsed, moss growing over the roof. And yet, smoke rose faintly from the chimney. "Elias!" she called softly. The door creaked open, and for a moment, her heart leapt until she saw him. The man in the black coat. He smiled as though he'd been expecting her. The little servant girl who dances with princes. Clara's voice trembled. "Where is he?" "Alive," the man said, stepping closer. "For now." He circled her slowly, his boots sinking into the wet ground. His voice carried an old accent, something ancient beneath its softness. "You have no idea what he is, do you?" "I know enough." "Do you?" His eyes gleamed. "Do you know that every time the moon rises, your precious Elias loses a piece of himself? That he's fighting a curse written in blood before he was even born?" Clara's throat tightened. "He told me he was cursed." The man chuckled darkly. "Cursed is a gentle word for what he carries. He's the last of the moonborn line, a prince bound by a pact older than this land. His father traded their humanity for strength. And the son pays the price." She felt her knees weaken. "What price?" "The blood of the innocent." Her breath hitched. "No." "Oh yes," he said almost kindly. "Do you think the missing guard simply wandered off? He feeds the curse, girl. He tries to stop it, to hide in the woods, but the hunger grows. It always does." Clara shook her head violently. "You're lying." "Am I?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Tell me, when you looked into his eyes last night, did you see guilt? Did you feel the tremor in his hands? That's not love, child. That's restraint. He's fighting the instinct to tear you apart." Clara backed away, her chest tight. "You don't know him." The man's smile faded. "I know him better than you ever will. He's my brother." The world tilted. He let the words settle between them like falling ash. "My name is Lucian, and I've been sent to bring the prince home, before he kills again." Her voice broke. "If you cared about him, you'd help him, not hunt him." Lucian's eyes softened briefly. "I tried. But he's beyond saving. The only mercy left is to end his suffering before he becomes what our father wanted, a monster wearing a crown of bones." He reached into his coat and drew a blade, long, curved, its edge glinting with silver. Clara's pulse roared in her ears. "You can't." "I must," he said simply. "The moon rises again tonight." She stepped between him and the woods. "Then you'll have to go through me." For a heartbeat, something flickered in his expression, Pity, maybe even admiration. Then he sheathed the blade and stepped back. You're braver than most. But bravery won't save him. Love won't, either. He turned away, disappearing into the mist as silently as he'd appeared. Clara stood there trembling, rain beginning to fall again, soft and cold. By dusk, the forest was alive with whispers. The wind through the leaves sounded like voices calling her name. She found Elias near the riverbank, kneeling in the mud, blood streaked across his arms. Her heart stopped. Elias! He looked up slowly. His eyes were dull, hollow, and his shirt was torn, claws still half-formed at the tips of his fingers. Clara, he rasped. You shouldn't have come. She dropped beside him, clutching his face. You're hurt. It's not my blood. Her stomach twisted. What did you do? He looked away, shaking. I don't remember. When the moon takes me, I lose everything. The world turns red, and then, silence. Elias, listen to me. No, he said sharply, his voice breaking. You don't understand. I tried to fight it. I thought I could control it for you. But he's right, the curse is stronger than I am. Lucien, she whispered. His head snapped up. You saw him. He told me everything. About your father. About the bloodline. Elias's expression hardened. He twists the truth to justify his cruelty. He killed our mother, said he was saving her. And now he wants to save me the same way. Tears burned in her eyes. There must be another way. He reached for her hand, his touch trembling. There is. But it comes with a price. What price? The bond. He looked into her eyes, voice trembling. If a human gives their heart willingly, not in word but in blood, the curse can shift. It will chain itself to both souls, divided. I will live, but the hunger will seek balance. It will haunt you too. Her breath caught. You mean it would curse me? Yes. She searched his face, the anguish, the fear. And if I refuse? Then I die by my brother's blade. The rain began to fall harder, streaking down their faces, thunder rolling in the distance. Clara's voice broke. Elias, I can't lose you. He closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against hers. You already have. But she didn't let go. She pressed his shaking hand against her heart. Then take it. Take it before the moon rises. He stared at her in horror. Clara, no. Yes, she said, tears mixing with rain. If this is what it takes to save you, then let the curse have me too. He shook his head, jaw trembling. You don't know what forever means. She smiled through the tears. I think I do. Elias let out a broken sound, half sob, half growl, and pulled her into his arms. The forest shuddered as thunder split the sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, the first pale light of the rising moon glowed faintly through the mist. He looked up, fear and hunger warring in his gaze. It's too late. The wind howled cold and wild. Clara reached up, her hand on his cheek. Then let it find us together. And as the first full gleam of moonlight struck them, Elias bent his head, not to kiss her, but to bite. The world went white. Pain seared through her like fire, her heart hammering, blood burning with something ancient and alive. Elias's cry echoed through the woods, part agony, part salvation. Then silence. When Clara opened her eyes again, she was lying in the wet grass, her vision tinted gold. Elias knelt beside her, trembling, his wounds gone. He whispered her name like a prayer. But behind him at the tree line, Lucien stood watching, the silver blade glinting faintly in his hand. The moon was still rising, and it was far from done with them. The night carried the smell of iron and pine. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest drenched and glistening beneath the full moon. Silver light poured through the branches like liquid glass, catching every droplet, every trembling breath. Clara could taste blood on her tongue, not metallic and foreign but sweet, alive. It pulsed through her veins like wildfire, burning, stretching, rewriting her body from the inside. She gasped, gripping the earth as the pain swelled again, sharp and electric. Elias caught her before she fell. His arms shook as he held her, his face pale with terror. "It's working," he whispered, though it sounded like a curse. "Clara, it's taking hold." Her eyes fluttered open, gold now, faintly luminous. "I can feel it," she breathed. "Everything, your heartbeat, the trees, the moon." He brushed her hair back with trembling fingers. "I never wanted this for you." She smiled weakly. "Then you shouldn't have looked at me that way." For a moment he almost smiled back, but then the wind shifted. The forest changed. The stillness broke under the snap of twigs, the rustle of movement. Shadows gathered among the trees, forming into figures, men with pale eyes and the silent discipline of hunters. Lucian stepped out first, his black coat glistening with rain. Behind him, half a dozen others, the royal pack, Elias's birthright and curse. "You shouldn't have come here," Elias growled. Lucian tilted his head. "And yet, here you are, brother, with the girl who carries our curse now. How poetic." Clara tried to stand, but her legs trembled. Elias stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body. His voice was low, guttural, more wolf than man. "Leave her out of this." Lucian's smile was pitying. "You bound her to the moon. You made her one of us. There's no leaving her out anymore." He drew the silver blade again, moonlight flickering across its surface. "Our father's line cannot end with corruption. I'll do what mercy demands." Elias bared his teeth. "You call this mercy?" Lucian's eyes softened. "You've never understood. You're not saving her, Elias, you're damning her. The bond you forged will eat at her soul until there's nothing human left. I've seen it before." Clara's breath hitched. "He's lying," Elias whispered, though his voice faltered on the word. Lucian stepped closer, boots silent on the wet leaves. "When her body gives in, when the moon claims her fully, she'll become what we are, cursed to hunger, to hunt, to outlive every mortal thing she loves. That's the truth you gave her." The pack behind him murmured, not cruelly, but with reverence, like witnesses to a tragedy. Elias turned to Clara, eyes wild. "Don't listen to him. I can control it. I'll teach you how." Her heart broke at the desperation in his voice. She reached for him, her touch trembling. "Elias, look at me." He did. Her golden eyes reflected his, mirrors of the same doomed light. "If this is what I am now, then I'll carry it. With you." Lucian's voice hardened. "You think love can bind a curse. Love is what broke it in the first place." He lunged. Elias met him mid-stride, two blurs of motion colliding with the force of thunder. The pack scattered into the trees as the brothers tore through the clearing, claws flashing, the earth shattering beneath them. Lucian's blade slashed the air, missing Elias by inches. Elias's claws caught his shoulder, drawing blood that steamed under the moonlight. Clara tried to move, but her body felt heavy, her senses spinning. The new heartbeat inside her, the one that wasn't entirely her own, pulsed louder, more insistent. "Elias!" she cried, staggering forward. Lucian caught him with a blow that sent him crashing into a fallen tree. Elias rose, snarling, eyes gold and burning. "Enough!" Clara screamed. Her voice rang through the forest, a sound that wasn't entirely human. The trees shuddered. The air trembled. Both brothers froze. Clara stood in the moonlight, her eyes blazing brighter than either of theirs, her blood-slicked palms trembling. "If this curse belongs to both of us," she said, her voice shaking, "then I decide what it means." Lucian stared at her, awe and fear flickering in his expression. "You don't understand the power you've invited." "Maybe not," she said, stepping closer, "but I understand love." She turned to Elias, her heart breaking open. "And I understand that I won't let you die for something that wasn't your choice." Lucian's expression darkened. "Then you'll die with him." He raised the blade. Elias roared, lunging forward, but Clara was faster. The new strength inside her moved like instinct, like wind. She stepped between them just as Lucian thrust. The blade met flesh. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Clara looked down, the silver tip buried deep in her chest. Elias's scream tore through the forest. He caught her before she fell, pulling the blade free. His hands slick with her blood. Lucian staggered back, horror written across his face. No! Clara's lips trembled. Don't blame him, she whispered. He was right. Love breaks everything. Elias pressed his forehead to hers. His voice shattered. No, stay with me. The bond, it can heal you. She smiled faintly. Then take it. Take all that's left. He shook his head violently. If I do, I lose you. Her voice softened, fading. You already did, when you bit me. Her body went still. The moonlight pulsed once, then flared, blinding. Elias's cry echoed as her blood touched his skin, the bond snapping open like a door torn off its hinges. Energy flooded through the forest, burning silver, shaking the ground. The pack fell to their knees. Lucian shielded his eyes. When the light faded, Clara's body was gone. Only a ring of scorched grass remained, and in its center Elias, on his knees, hands covered in silver ash. Lucian approached slowly, his voice hollow. What did you do? Elias didn't answer. His eyes, once gold, were now human again. Pale, grief-stricken, empty. The wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere far away a wolf howled, but it sounded wrong. Echoed. Like two voices tangled into one. Lucian knelt beside him, blade forgotten. Brother! Elias finally spoke, voice cracked and distant. She's still here. Lucian frowned. What? Elias lifted his hand. His palm shimmered faintly, silver veins glowing under the skin. The bond didn't die with her. It changed. The forest went silent. Lucian stepped back, realization dawning. You merged with her. Elias's gaze turned toward the sky, the moon reflected in his tears. She gave me her heart. Now it beats in me and in the earth. She's part of everything. Lucian whispered. Then you've doomed us all. Elias looked at him, eyes hollow and fierce. No, brother. She set us free. The wind rose again, carrying with it a faint sound. A heartbeat that wasn't bound to flesh anymore, pulsing through the leaves, the soil, the moonlit air. And when Elias stood, his shadow stretched long and strange. Not quite human, not quite wolf, something entirely new. He turned toward the forest, where the mist opened like a path. Lucian called out, voice breaking. Where will you go? Elias looked back once, the sorrow in his face almost holy. To find her. Wherever she's gone. He vanished into the fog, swallowed by the sound of the rising wind. Lucian stood alone under the dying moon, the silver blade glinting uselessly in his hand. And somewhere far away, beyond the trees and time itself, a woman's voice whispered his name. Soft, eternal. Elias. The first snow came early that year. It fell over the Blue Ridge Mountains like ashes from some quiet heaven, blanketing the old trees, muffling the sound of everything that still dared to breathe. Elias had been wandering for months. He no longer hunted, no longer slept. He moved between towns like a ghost, keeping to the forests, following the pulse that only he could hear, that faint rhythmic echo that was not entirely his own. Clara's heartbeat. Sometimes when the wind blew a certain way, he could smell her, lavender and rain. Sometimes when the moon was high, he could almost see her walking ahead of him, white dress glimmering through the mist. But when he reached for her, she was gone. The curse had changed. The hunger was gone, replaced by something colder. Emptiness. The wolf within him slept now, chained by love, by loss. And yet, something in him still trembled under every full moon, as though waiting for her voice. He followed it north, past the small towns that dotted the Appalachian hills, Weaverville, Burnsville, Boone, until he reached the edge of a frozen lake. It was midnight. The moon hung huge and low, reflecting off the ice like a mirror. Elias stood at the shore, the snow falling around him in soundless grace. He could feel her presence here more than ever, not as a ghost, not as memory, but as something living. He dropped to his knees, pressing a hand to the frozen water. "Clara," he whispered. "Show me where you are." The ice glowed faintly beneath his touch, threads of silver light pulsing outward like veins. The reflection in the lake rippled, and then he saw her, standing across the frozen expanse, barefoot in the snow, her dress pale as the moon. She looked exactly as he remembered, soft, luminous, her eyes golden like the light just before dawn. He froze. "Clara!" Her lips curved in a small, sad smile. "You found me." He rose, heart pounding, taking a step onto the ice. It held beneath his feet, each movement a whisper. "You're real. I'm what's left of real," she said gently. "Part of the forest now. Part of you." He stopped a few feet from her, afraid to breathe. "Why can I see you now?" "Because tonight is the last full moon of the year," she said softly. "The night the bond decides its shape. What we are, it will be sealed forever after this." His voice broke. "Then stay. Let it seal us together." She looked away, snow gathering in her hair like stardust. "You don't understand. For you to live as man again, I have to disappear." He shook his head violently. "No. I'd rather die 1,000 times." She stepped closer, her hand hovering just above his cheek, light shimmering through her fingers. "You already died once, Elias. The night you lost your brother, your crown, your curse, and me. You deserve peace now." He caught her hand, though it felt like holding sunlight. "Peace without you isn't peace at all." Tears slipped down her translucent face. "You think love means holding on. But sometimes, Elias, love is the mercy of letting go." The wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo of howls through the trees. He turned, and there on the far side of the lake, Lucien appeared, walking slowly through the snow. The moon painted his face silver. The blade was gone. "Brother," Elias whispered. Lucien stopped a few paces away. "I felt her too," he said quietly. "She called to me." Clara smiled faintly. "You're both bound by the same blood. It's time you remembered that." Lucien's eyes glistened. "I came to kill you. And now all I want is to bring you home." Elias laughed softly, the sound breaking apart. "There is no home." Clara stepped between them, her form flickering like candlelight. "There can be. But only if you forgive each other." Lucien looked at his brother, shame etched deep into every line of his face. "I thought I was saving you. I was saving myself from what I'd done." Elias met his gaze, and for the first time since their mother's death, there was no hatred between them, only grief worn thin by time. "I forgive you," Elias said simply. The wind stilled. Clara closed her eyes. "Then my work is done." "No." Elias reached for her, panic clawing at his chest. "Please." Her smile was tender, radiant. "You gave me forever in a single heartbeat, Elias. That's more than most ever find." The world grew brighter. The moon's reflection on the ice shimmered and broke apart into 1,000 pieces of light. Snow swirled upward, glowing like embers. Clara's form began to dissolve into the air, not fading but transforming, her light spreading through the forest, through the sky. "Clara!" Elias shouted. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, gentle as falling snow. "Every time the wind moves the trees, I'll be there. Every time you look at the moon, you'll see what we were, what we chose." He dropped to his knees again, sobbing into the snow. Lucien stood behind him, eyes wet, the silver light reflected in his tears. And then silence. Only the whisper of the wind through the pines, the soft creak of the frozen lake, the fading pulse of her magic. Elias stayed there until dawn. When the first light touched the sky, the gold in his eyes flickered once, then went out. He was human again. Spring came slowly that year. The forest thawed, and the Whitmore estate fell into ruin, overtaken by vines and moss. The world moved on. But some nights, when the moon rose full over the blue ridge, locals swore they saw a man walking the tree line. Tall, dark-haired, eyes reflecting silver. They said he was harmless, that sometimes he would leave flowers by the old fountain, or whisper to the river as if it were a living thing. And sometimes, when the wind passed through the pines just right, the air filled with a faint sound of laughter, soft like a woman dancing barefoot through rain. Years later, Lucien found him again. Older, quieter, living in a small cabin near the lake. Elias was sitting on the porch, carving a small wooden charm. When Lucien approached, he smiled faintly. "You came." Lucien nodded. "I had to see it for myself." Elias held up the charm, a simple carving of a moon and a lily. "She still visits," he said softly. "Not as before. Just in the wind, in the dreams." Lucien sat beside him, the two brothers silent for a long time. "What are you carving it for?" Lucien finally asked. Elias smiled. "For the girl who changed my fate forever." Lucien exhaled slowly. "And what of the curse?" Elias looked at the horizon where the sun was beginning to rise, gold spilling over the mountains, warm and alive. "It ended with her. The curse was never the wolf. It was the fear of love." Lucien nodded quietly, his eyes on the light. "Then maybe it was worth it." Elias closed his eyes, feeling the morning breeze brush against his face. Soft, warm, full of something familiar. He could almost hear her voice again, faint and distant. "You found me," he smiled. "Always." And somewhere, beyond the reach of time and sorrow, the servant girl and the shy werewolf prince danced once more, in the light between worlds, where love had no curse and forever was just another word for home.